Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the regular meeting, special edition of the regular meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Fredonia, 911 Church Street in Fredonia, New York, 14063, on this September 10th, 2025 at 6 p.m. Call this meeting to order. I'm Mayor Mike Ferguson. There are two things we want to talk about before I officially start the roll call tonight, and one of them being tomorrow is a very special day in American history. It'll be the 24th anniversary of the 9/11 attack on the U.S. At 10:30 tomorrow morning in front of the Fredonia Fire Hall, there will be a memorial to remember the brave men and women and families that suffered because of that terrible tragedy. We hope that you'll be able to join us. And because of that, and because we have a meeting tonight and not tomorrow, immediately following our Pledge of Allegiance, I would ask for a moment of silence in honor of those that suffered. I call this meeting to order at September 10th at 6 o'clock p.m. Trustee Esperson. Here. Trustee Twitchell.
Here.
Trustee Brockler.
Here.
Trustee Syracuse.
Here.
Trustee Wendell.
Here.
Ladies and gentlemen, please rise, remove your hats for the Pledge of the Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Now, I also know that while this is a regular meeting, we want to remind you that, yes, the water vote is tonight, but we still have plenty of other business that we have to take care of tonight. I want to read a quote that I'm sure we're all familiar with, and I think it balances an even keel. John F. Kennedy said, "Let us not seek the Republican answer nor the Democratic answer, but the right answer. Let us not seek the fix to blame for the past. Let us accept our own responsibility for the future." And I think we all need to carry that outside the building in the near future as well. It's easy to point fingers at the past. It's easy to point fingers left and right and up the middle. The bottom line tonight should be a lesson not only for this administration, but for future administrations. Take care of the things that you own. Take care of your properties so that in another 30 or 40 or 50 years, your great-grandchildren aren't making the decisions that we are going to have to try to make tonight. With that, there's no approval of minutes tonight, so we'll start the meeting with we have a couple of walk-ons, correct, or do you want to do the public portion first?
The public portion.
Public portion first.
Right.
Okay, the portion of the meeting is for public comment. There is a microphone. You can see it over to my left, your right. Any member of the public wishing to speak, once recognized, shall stand at the microphone and state your name. Speakers will be allowed 3 minutes if speaking for themselves, 5 minutes if speaking on behalf of a legitimate group. I will ask the speakers to refrain from remarks that are in poor taste, slanderous, or not germane to any action taken or contemplated by the board. With that, we'll allow anyone that wants to approach the microphone to please step up, and we do have a timer up here.
I'm Andrew Ludwig. I live at 30 Ryan Place, Fredonia. On a number of occasions, leaders of this board have refused to answer questions and address concerns expressed by members of the public regarding the important decision to be made here tonight regarding Fredonia's water system. Trustees have been quick to suggest that concerned citizens call them with questions and concerns to be addressed with private conversations. Government officials should be transparent, and good government isn't run through private phone calls and backroom conversations and deals. I don't understand why trustees are so reluctant to state for the record and on camera why they will be voting tonight to decommission the reservoir and buy water from the North County Water District. If board members truly feel that this is the best course of action for Fredonia Water, just say so and just say why. My little speech tonight won't take 3 minutes, but I remember a forum at SUNY Fredonia about a decade or so ago regarding the closing and repowering of the Niagara Mohawk Energy Plant. There was no 3-minute time limit on speakers during that important discussion, and there shouldn't be one tonight. You should let the public speak for as long as they need to and try to listen to them for a change. I'm not going to speak for more than 3 minutes, and I won't ask any questions. But I do want to remind this village board that you chose to run for office. No one forced you to do so. And although it's not much money, You're paid to act in the best interests of the village taxpayers, not in the best interests of the city of Dunkirk, the town of Pomfret, the North County Water District, or county government. When you vote in just a few minutes to decommission the village reservoir, simply say why you feel it's in the best interest for Fredonians. You can't honestly say that it's less expensive to decommission and buy when 3 different studies have shown that it's not. Even the LaBella engineer at the most recent presentation admitted that LaBella was recommending decommissioning for non-financial reasons. You haven't addressed concerns regarding the added cost of buying water, nor the cost of water loss due to main breaks, leaks, and municipal use. You haven't addressed the contractual issues that will need to be resolved before a water deal can be made. These issues were clearly presented to you by the former village attorney. You haven't addressed reliability issues raised by the fact that Fredonia currently already has 2 connections with the North County Water District that have been inoperable since their construction 5 years ago. How are we supposed to trust that this plan is even going to work when we have 200 connections that aren't operational? If Village buys water from the North County Water District in Pumpsville, Fredonians could be left without water, no water at all, for extended periods of time. In spite of these and many other questions and concerns that have not been addressed by this board, we already know how this vote's going to go down. You've had your minds made up for almost 2 years. So here's my challenge to you trustees. When you cast your vote tonight, boldly tell the public, for the record and on camera, why you believe that decommissioning the reservoir, buying water from the North County Water District is in the best interest of Fredonia. Show the courage of your convictions, that is if you have any, and give the public the explanations that they deserve.
Next.
Good evening. My name's Sally Piazza. I live at 204 Seymour Street in Fredonia. I have no opinion one way or the other because I'm not informed. So I'm here to ask you questions. Do you know what the new water rate will be? It's currently $7.60. I heard things from $10 to $26. I don't know. I feel like I need to know that. Is there any strategic plan to help our infrastructure, which you have not addressed? And I don't blame just this board. I blame what's happened for the last 20 years. We've done nothing to address the fundamental problems. I understand there's a $5 million payback to the North County Water District. Dunkirk can't pay it back. What will be our portion of that $5 million? And I heard that there's going to be grant money. Do we know what grant money and the kind of money we're talking about to help pay these bills? Thank you.
Anyone else?
My name is Athanasia Landis. I live in Fredonia. So the mayor went on the radio yesterday to tell us that although today's meeting is open to the public, people will have only 3 minutes to talk, provided we understand we cannot ask questions as to the board's decision because, in his words, this is not a debate. I understand that. Debate or not, however, everyone knows what you're planning to do tonight. Right now, you're going through the motions, so no one can say that you didn't allow the people to speak. Yet, you don't seem to care enough to even attempt to understand what we're trying to tell you. This is not something new. For a year and a half now, we tried talking to you many times in many different ways. We posed questions. We gave you facts. We tried to make sense of the numbers you repeated and very expensive studies you had provided. We did it in private as well as in open meetings. We asked nicely. We pleaded with you. I pleaded with you. We even tried to shame you into doing your duty, which is to protect the physical and financial well-being of the community. We even petitioned you. I personally delivered to you at an open meeting a petition signed by over 300 people of this community asking you to fix our own water system instead of discarding it. That by itself should have triggered a public referendum. Yet, not once did you go to the trouble to discussing what that petition said, not even for a second, not even mentioning it. Maybe it was by design and meant to discourage us for talking or asking questions or even coming to these meetings. Maybe you just don't know the answers to our questions. Or maybe, and this is much scarier, you know them but choose to ignore them for reasons you have kept to yourselves. So tonight I will not ask why you're choosing the most expensive option, which will eventually, according to your numbers, raise the annual water bill for the average family by over $1,800 instead of the one that's cheaper by about $450. I will not remind you that grant applications should be accompanied by an actual physical plan of the project, a detailed budget, a two-way approved intermunicipal agreement, and a SICR where a negative declaration is based on provided evidence. I won't ask why you totally disregarded the possibility to fix the dam and stabilize the water filtration plant using the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Finally, I will not ask you why depriving the area of a water source that's reliable, safe, and clear is so imperative to you. Honestly, I always supported us being the back door to the back source to the North County Water District. I thought we should have a connection to them. I just don't think we should cut totally our water system. Well, however, as the mayor said, this is not a debate. This was never a debate. It's an agenda. It's your agenda, and we're implementing it.
Next.
Dee Sedota, and I live at 31 Suzanne Court. And I would just like to follow up on Andy. Today and yesterday, I actually read the Labella report. It's about an inch thick. It took me a while. And it was fascinating because it started off the first page saying they recommend decommissioning the reservoir and going with Dunkirk. And then they spent all kinds of word after word and all kinds of engineering terms, which I could even understand after I studied it a bit. And then at the end, they recommended it again. But as Andy said, when it came to monetary, this is non-monetary. This is non-monetary. This is just, this is out of our realm. And then it ripped apart what we have and made it did recommend fixes. But for the most part, it just pretty much pointed out every flaw, probably every mouse hole in the plant, okay? But nothing in there about Dunkirk's plant. And they've had consent orders. They've had problems with their water. They have broken pipes. They have ancient pipes. So we know what happened on Central Avenue, not that long ago, okay, in Dunkirk. So I think that my concern is that Labella did not answer those questions. When I read that report, all I found, were references to a drought, and we've never really died from a drought in Fredonia, but we've had floods. Nothing in there about floods. But you're going to take that water and do what with it, and where is it going? And in the report, by the way, there's nothing that addresses the cost of the reservoir, decommissioning it or doing whatever with it. And the big part, if you look at the numbers, there's nothing in there about what the water is going to cost because we have no clue what Dunkirk is going to charge us. Now, maybe you do. Maybe it's a secret that you guys all have. But right now, the public has no clue. And that's wrong, all right? And government is supposed to answer to the people. Thank you.
My name is Tom Carpenter, and I live on Sunset Drive here in the village. I've lived in the village for 52 years. I come before this board and community members to raise 7 quick items. 1, I ask once again for a public referendum, as I did 17 months ago, and as many, many village residents have asked repeatedly for the last 2 years. The biggest issues ever to face this village is the siting of the Fredonia Academy in 1826 and the decision to repair this beautiful building, or tear it down in the early 1980s, were both put to referendum. This water issue, deserves village residents' input as well. 17 months ago, the late Jim Sedota came before this board with an Army Corps of Engineering grant proposal, and you ignored him. It was a 5149 grant that would have cost village residents $12 to $14 million over 30 years, interest-free. We wouldn't have had to start paying the grant back until 6 years after the work was completed. 3, I will reiterate that all of you, except Mrs. Twitchell, are accomplices in stealing thousands of village water customers and businesses and handing us to the county. 4, the level of conflict of interest surrounding this debacle has been unethical, and I believe at times against state law. In my opinion, there is no conflict of interest larger than that of the supervisor of the town of Pomfret. I do not think that it's beyond reasonable for the supervisor to resign from either the town board or from his position as chairman of the water district. We still don't know whether the $5 million that the water district borrowed has been paid back to the county, and that's our money. 5, with all due respect to Mr. Ketchum and Mr. Pagano, I'll stop. Where is the widespread support for this? Where are people who support what you want to do? Where are they? I sure can't find them. Has my time expired?
1 minute.
Sorry. 6, I believe that the $30,000 that given to Labella without public knowledge by the Chautauqua County Legislature was against state law or against the spirit of state law. It doesn't matter. The money went to an engineering firm. The money was to study a municipal water system, and that municipality, Fredonia, I believe needed to publicly ask for that study and vote publicly to accept that money. You did neither. Finally, if any of you think this is over, you're nuts. I can assure you that every option is on the table, including the possibility of a class action lawsuit. You have not followed state law. You have questionably followed your own village charter. You have conducted most of your deliberations behind closed doors. You have refused to include the public in your actions. Refused. You have often operated without values or principles, mostly honesty. And the level of your unethical behavior is the very definition of a conflict of interest. You have trashed and weakened our community. You have not held the public's trust, and you have abused it. We want a referendum. Thank you.
Yep. Next.
Hello, my name is Patrick Prowell-Sexton. I live at 70 Spring Street, Fredonia. I've lived here about 2.5 years. I bought my first home here for many specific reasons, one of which was the diversity that Fredonia has in this area. It's very strange what Fredonia is. It's very special. And I know a lot of you up there personally, and I fear what this decision is doing is actually limiting your power, and you guys are afraid that you don't know that you're enough to do what needs to be done. And I watch you guys weekly on YouTube. I have met you. I've met your children. I've met your families. Like, I believe in you guys that you can do this. And I think you're limiting yourselves with this bipartisanship, with the keep the reservoir, get rid of the reservoir, hook up with Dunkirk, don't hook up with Dunkirk. Do both. You guys can do it. We can do it as a village. We can figure out both options and keep this diversity that makes this place special open. We are going to be a refugee hotspot for climate change. Having another water source in this area is going to be irreplaceable. Like, I know it's going to be expensive now. Connecting to Dunkirk is going to be expensive now. We don't know what's going to happen. It's very shifty. The way I look at it is it's us in Fredonia facing off against New York State and what New York State wants to do, and I very much so support New York State. I love New York State. They make my life possible. However, they also have reasons to make things simpler. And our reservoir is not simple. It does not make it simple for them, okay? Then we're talking about development on Lake Erie, the plastics that are within that water. We're developing a nuclear power plant. I personally grew up next to Niagara Falls. I know about terrorist attacks and how that can happen and how that is a regular threat. That is something we should be thinking about as a village. I'm ignorant. I do not know all of these things, but let's not do left or right or wrong. Keep our options open as much as possible, because I think we can do it. I really, really do. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hello, my name is Richard Ketchum. I live Burnett Drive in Fredonia. First, thanks for holding the hearing. But I believe the citizens rightfully want to get a hopefully accurate answer basically to the following question. We've heard it a couple of times tonight, and I know I still want the same answer. How will my water rate be affected in the short term and in the long term by the decisions that are being made tonight? I have heard in public meetings that our water rate will be about half as much if alternative 2 is selected. I've also heard in public meetings that our rate will go up by 400% if alternative 2 is selected. As recently, literally as this afternoon, a fellow citizen, resident, came up to me like I might know something special, which I don't, or wouldn't be here asking questions probably, is there any possibility the village might initiate a special assessment to pay for whatever alternative is decided? I said, I've never heard of that. I can't imagine that would be possible, but I mean, people have concerns. Again, what is it going to cost me? I mean, it's a very basic and important question. Clearly, there are a lot of unknowns, including something no one's spoken about tonight, and I haven't heard a lot of attention being paid to, and that's dredging costs, if alternative 1 was selected. Both the cost to dredge the existing reservoir and to impound the material that would be dredged out, which at least I've been told is categorized as hazardous waste, which is interesting when it's in a reservoir already, but, and it would have to be handled in a special way for a long period of time. Every budget in any organization is prepared using assumptions. And I understand, because I've asked a number of you and others say, well, we can't really give you a number because we don't know a bunch of answers. I literally personally been involved in preparation of hundreds of budgets, and not one, not a single one ever was made without the first step of what are our assumptions? You know, if it was in a hospital, how many patients we're going to have next year? If it's, you know, a different business, you know, what's the price of food going to go up? What's, in this case, I think a very important one is A, what's the cost of dredging, which I was told there was a quote a number of years ago, and B, perhaps more importantly, what do we think the grants will be? I've heard that, I mean, and I believe, I just don't say I've heard, I strongly believe that the grant opportunities will be much stronger in alternative 2 than alternative 1. But if we want to do a pro forma, try to figure out what the cost would be, say, well, in alternative 1, we think we might get, just an example, 10% grant funding. If we take alternative 2, we think it'll be 50% grant funding, or any other of an unlimited number of potential scenarios. But to calculate what's my rate going to be, you have to start with the assumptions. You know, what are the customers going to be? How much water is the hospital going to use? These are assumptions, but I think they're better than just saying, we don't know, so we can't put a number out there. You know, it's very difficult to make this decision, perhaps the most important one in a generation, without really trying to come up with this information and communicating it. But I don't think this has got to be an us versus them situation. For example, the note that Sam Dreo had published in a paper a few weeks ago, I thought he made great points. I really did. Every single point in there about, you know, what's the contract going to be, what's it going to include, who's going to negotiate it, when's it going to be negotiated. These are questions that, you know, the citizens have a right to know, and they should be answered. That being said, I've spent a significant amount of time investigating and considering the alternative options. Despite some of the concerns I've previously stated, I believe the time has come to make a decision, and I believe that alternative 2 is the better long-term choice. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Thank you. Hi, it's Mike Witcher. I'm 303 East Main Street in Fredonia. First of all, thank you for having this meeting tonight. I think it's important for public comment, even if it's perhaps if you're already more or less decided on where the vote goes. I just had a couple things. I was anxiously awaiting the meeting tonight, and I checked online the village website to make sure it was still going. And curiously enough, under meetings, in red, it said the meeting for September 10th was canceled. So I don't know who might be responsible for handling the website for the village, but if anyone checked like I did, I almost didn't come because I thought it was canceled. And then I went on YouTube and saw, sure enough, the meeting was going. So it might be something you want to check on because, again, it might have discouraged some folks from coming out. And just to perhaps echo a couple of things that Mr. Ketchum highlighted, I think it's very important, obviously, in people's minds who are paying the bills every month, how much is this going to cost? I know my own personal water bill has gone up. It's over $300 a quarter right now. And I know that the option with going with the North County resource may be cheaper in the short term, but then long term, as Mr. Ketchum alluded to, it might increase our water bills some fourfold. Currently, I think it's $7.60 per 1,000 gallons, and there had been mention at a December meeting, workshop meeting, that the possible charge for village residents for water would be $28 a 1,000, so it's fourfold. Perhaps that figure is not correct, but you know, as residents sit here and look at their options, certainly that seems like shocking, and perhaps, although maybe the cost, short-term cost is cheaper going with North County, costs more to get our reservoir back up to speed, but long-term we wouldn't be paying $28 per gallon, I'm sure, or per 1,000 gallons, excuse me. So, you know, I think telling the voters what the actual cost would be is significant. I don't know why or where that $28 figure comes from, but I know Dunkirk, I think right now pays about $5 something per 1,000 gallons. So why would Fredonia, being the main customer for the North County, have to pay 5 or 6 times what Dunkirk is? So again, numbers are important, and I would suggest that all those numbers be rock solid, or at least a very good estimate of what they're going to be, either option, before you make this decision. So thanks very much, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Next.
My name is Sylvia Hanlon, and I live at 3 Nance Terrace in Fredonia. And my husband and I moved here 4 years ago purposely to live near our children. We chose Fredonia. And I just don't want my 4-year-old granddaughter drinking water from Lake Erie. Thank you.
Anyone else?
My name is James Linden. I live at 55 Castile Drive. I've been attending these board meetings since the inception, nearly every single board meeting since the inception of the idea of the North County Water District taking over Fredonia. Thank you. I understand thoroughly. I've read the thousands of pages of documents, engineering studies, further studies, and I've seen the hundreds of thousands of dollars spent on the studies of studies and the engineering. When the people said that, board members said they didn't understand the engineering, they needed confirmation or understanding of the studies. And then those studies were somehow abandoned to go along and adopt a study from the North County Water District, which seems that's done by the same engineering company of the village. It seems like a conflict of interest to some degree, but it was done. Now, in this resolution tonight, there's a lot of deficiencies I found. In this resolution tonight, there is a resolution that gives authority for the mayor to execute agreements and further negotiate terms. That's not how it's done. Terms and agreements are negotiated ahead of time and not given the mayor's authority to execute them ahead of time. They're brought to the board for discussion, approval by the board. The board gives the mayor authority to sign and execute them, and further execute, make sure they're executed in their fullest. This has not happened. There was an agreement with the North County Water District for the connections on Route 20 for our safety 5 years ago. The mayor has not executed or made sure that was executed. So, here we are today. I don't know how much more I could say. I spoke at nearly every single one of those meetings. I know you all have. It's been in the newspaper. I know you've seen me. You've heard me. The board has heard me, but maybe not actually heard me because it went over their heads. Talk about the finances. We're talking about the difference between over 30 years. I see in the agreement they're talking about something about 40 years. I didn't realize we could go 40 years, so I thought it was a 30-year payout for costs. But over at our current rate, we would be about somewhere around $63 million at our own cost over 30 years. You could do the numbers. Jim Sedota did the numbers. Rick St. George did the numbers. Many people did the numbers. Okay? We all came to a similar idea. If buying the water through the North County Water District for over 30 years is going to be about $150 million plus. You could double our rate, giving you another $63 million, solve all of our issues. You could darn near build a whole new reservoir. And what would you'd still have our stuff, and you would still pay far less than going with North County Water District. That, in turn, I realize it's financial, but and the seeker doesn't necessarily cover financial, except if it changes the character of your community. And that would, in fact, change the character of our community. I know that the hospital wasn't going to come to Fredonia because there was a holdup. People didn't believe it should come to Fredonia. But after a blue ribbon group came forward and realized the aha moment, it was the best interest of Fredonia to move here. And I realize some people have a lot more money than others. They can afford to pay a higher bill. But there's an awful lot. I heard from a lady here the other night. She had to give up everything that she enjoys just to pay her bills in this community after these very high expenses. Our village, our current general fund is currently in deficit. North County Water District borrowed millions of dollars from the general fund of the county. That's the taxpayers. They have not paid it back yet. The comptroller said they didn't do a proper financial analysis, and neither have you. A proper financial, Mr. Ketchum did hit that on. He did. Where's the proper financial analysis? We don't have one. And what they found was like with the hospital, it makes more sense to be in Fredonia, but a proper financial analysis would show you that it makes more sense to stay with our own water system. So I'm going to urge you. I could go on for an awfully long time about this, but I know my time's up and you're being kind enough to let me speak further. Thank you very much for that. I urge you to stay with our own system. It makes much, much more sense. Thank you.
Is there anybody else?
Anyone who agrees, please go line up and speak. There's no chance to start time to talk.
Has the decision already been made, though?
Well, then let's
Will
delay
they answer that? Has the decision been made?
it. Talk.
What about a referendum? What about it? Why can't we at least answer us?
Hi, my name is George Civiletto. I live on Link Street in Fredonia. I'm a terrible public speaker because I have a million things going through my head that sometimes collide when they come out of my mouth. But I've been in business since I was 22 years old. My dad was 2 generations older than me and kind of got a greenhouse dumped on me at the age of 21 years old. So I've kind of made my way through my life, and throughout my life I've had a lot of business experience, of course, with Tuscany, and a lot of business experience leasing commercial property to McDonald's, Tim Hortons, and the such. The one thing that always comes racing to my mind to begin with when I do a deal is I try to put myself 20 years down the road. You know, you look at inflation numbers, you compile inflation numbers, but where is this going to be in, let's say, 2045? Where is this going to be in 2055? And for me, that's where our issue lies. Because once we cede control of what we have total control of at this particular point, then we really don't know. And I understand it's hard work to try to get this reservoir fixed. I understand it's a challenge, an insurmountable challenge almost. But I think if we were 20 years down the road looking back on today, if the decision would be made to go with the North County Water District or any other water district, I think we'd look back at that as a mistake. Because honestly, in my heart, everything in my fiber of my being tells me that this is going to be a mistake in 20, 25 years. Of course, it may not affect us right now, but it's going to affect commerce in the Village of Fredonia down the road. We will no longer be competitive with any industry that wants to move in because we have no control over our water. The people and the communities around us that do have control over our water can easily outbid us on any job that any factory that comes in. Those particular points, to me, just that's where the problem lies with this. You know, I do agree that we need redundancy in the worst way, and I would hope that we have some type of hookup with either the North County or the City of Dunkirk as a redundant system. But honest to God, think about 2045, 2055, and what we're going to leave the Village of Fredonia, where our kids want to stay, where we want to build our community. I just think you're really ceding control, and once control is given up, it's given up. I really, really hope that you think very hard about this and do the extreme hard work, and that's make our reservoir whole again, rebuild our reservoir, and keep control of our costs down the road. Thank you.
I can't see you, so I don't know if anybody's coming up or not.
Robert Stark, 135 Pulaski. I have come to the conclusion in reviewing the 3 binders of data that I have accumulated over the past 37 months. It was in August of 2022 that the first mistake in this entire saga was made. I suggested at that time a water committee should be established to have a give and take open forum for the discussion of the issues at hand, and as the board at that time was split pro-reservoir and undecided, either side could have done it. Just maybe we would not be in the position we are now. On April 15th of 2024, I addressed and presented the board a financial analysis that there was no distinct difference between option 1 and option 3 of the November 2023 Labella study. Further, after reviewing 38 Department of Health slides, in conjunction with comments from 2 other individuals, the intangibles involved in option 1, it was clearly not the way to go. However, the successful lawsuit stopped the implementation of option number 3. May of 2025 brought revision 2 of Labella's engineering report, which I had commented on in a People's Column letter, where I expressed displeasure with the exclusion of option 3 from the original report and only a comparison of the original option 1 and a new interconnect with the North County Water District was presented. Again, I did a financial analysis of the options in the study, and my finding was that the new option may be cheaper to implement, but will be costlier in the long run. I presented my findings to 2 trustees in a meeting on August 27th, and they expressed to me it was too late to make any changes, as any possible grants and or funding streams may be drying up on the federal and state levels very soon, and the village could not afford to lose out on them. I was taught that you make your mistakes on paper and not in construction, the old measure twice, cut once saying. To the dismay of many in this room tonight, I believe the decision has been already made, but if the grant money or funding does not materialize as expected, I implore the board to take a quick step back and look at option 3 of the original report. In reviewing water projects in the county and situations that have occurred since the November 2023 study, I question some of LaBella's figures and assumptions as being off base. In fact, I submitted an alternative for a direct interconnect with Dunkirk back in October 23 that a village trustee said he passed on LaBella, but I doubt it was seriously considered by them. In conclusion, if the grants and funding do not materialize, as I believe option 3 would be more cost-effective over the long run and afford the village more control over the operation by excluding the towns and county in the purchase of water. And I believe that is what everybody wanted from the very beginning, control. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else at this time?
I'll be quick. My name's Dave Dijo. I live up on the Fredonia Stockton Road, and I only really know what I read about in the paper this morning because I get my water from a well. But if you're going to take the reservoir footprint, there's about 3,200 acres up there. And this morning I read that it looked like they maybe are going to turn it into a park. Well, that's fine. But if you're going to turn it into a park, are you going to have electrical service up there? Are you going to have pavilions? Are you going to have restrooms? Are you going to have sanitation? Who's going to put that infrastructure in? Where's that money going to come from? Who's going to maintain that park? And who's going to police that park? We're going to have to hire 4 or 5 more policemen and turn them into park rangers? I don't know the answer to that. But I do know this, and from listening to these people that are very well prepared, they're upset because their water bills have gone up. How do you think they're going to feel if they get a tax levy to pay for services in a park that I know they're never going to go to? Thanks.
Anyone else?
Sam Dreo, former village attorney. I drafted 9 water district agreements over my 48 years as village attorney. So I'm not trying to brag about that, but I do have a background with water districts and how they operate. I reviewed the papers that were presented to you and now before you, and I have some comments on them. There was omissions, there was errors in them, and I'd like to bring that to your attention. They talk about a water tower. It should be made clear that if there's a water tower, it's owned and operated by the village, not jointly. Jointly owned projects have inherent problems. So any water tower, and I think it's not stated that way in the contract, any water tower should be owned and operated by the village under a contract where the town of Pomfret contributes its fair share to that cost. Also, there is a fifth whereas in the proposed interconnection, which will be costly. They talk about interconnections that the village is going to have to incur. If that's so, then the town should pay its fair share of those interconnections. because the town will benefit for them as well as the village. That's not addressed in your contracts, and it should be. There's a fifth whereas. It's incorrect, and it's an important one. It states that the North County that the village has entered into an agreement with the North County Water District. That's not true. We have not. Before you go any further, you need to have that contract in front of you so you know what the terms and conditions of the purchase are. You don't have that. There's also, it's been stated by someone else, that the mayor is authorized to negotiate and sign agreements without village board approval. That's contrary to village law and contrary to our charter. The mayor can't sign anything unless the village board first authorizes it. Regarding the proposed contract, which we haven't seen, it's not before the board, with the North County Water District. There has to be a certain understanding in that agreement. What is the purchase price or formula the district proposes to charge the village? You haven't got that information, so I don't know how you can proceed with this. Number two, what is the term of the contract with the North County Water District? You don't know. Is it 5 years, 20 years, 40 years? How much water will the village be able to purchase? Any limitations? What costs, besides the cost of water, will the village have to pay to the district? What county district capital costs or improvement costs and debt service of the district will the village be required to pay? What other restrictions will the district place upon the village? You haven't got that information because you haven't got a draft of the proposed contract with the North County Water District. You should have that in front of you, and you don't. Since the village will be the largest purchaser of water from the Erie County, the Northern Chautauqua County Water District, it'll share the largest portion of the costs within that district, even though it might not benefit the village. So any contract you have with the North County Water District should be very clear that the cost to be paid by the village is only for costs and benefits directly benefiting the village. That's important because you're going to be the biggest consumer of water, and you could be the biggest payer of the costs of that district and receive no benefits. I'll try to make this brief, Mayor. There's certain things I think that are important to know, and that's getting back to the district and the village. The village has a gravity-fed system. That is a huge advantage to the village. With electricity costs skyrocketing and the question of whether the electric grid is even going to be reliable and will be without electricity for certain periods of time, it's important that you consider that we have a gravity-fed system that doesn't depend on electricity. An example, in the total cost to the village for electricity in 2024 was $26,000 for our whole water system. The city of Dunkirk for that same period was $214,000 because they have pumping stations and use a lot of electricity. That's 10 times what the village electric bill is. So before any decision is made, take those into consideration. I think in the long run, we spend the money that's necessary to dredge the reservoir, be independent. The papers before you are convoluted and confusing, and they're going to lead to trouble down the line. Thank you.
Is there anyone else to speak tonight?
Thank you for having this meeting here, this hearing. My name is Mitchell G. Cummings, 53 Houghton Street, and I was sitting at home watching a meeting, and I just had to hop in the car and come down here and say a few things. I think it was Dr. Ketchum and a gentleman who spoke a little bit after, and Sam Dreo just talked about dredging the reservoir. And a few years back, there was a public meeting here put on by the County Health Department, and they talked about the need to comply with the New York State public health laws, and it would be 50,000, they estimated 50,000 dump trucks of sediment had to be taken out of that reservoir. If that's correct, and you put it in a dump truck, 15 yards into a dump truck, and your dump truck's about 31 feet long, that would be dump trucks that would stretch from here past Columbus, Ohio. And that's just using a calculator and figuring it out. And stuff. Numbers don't lie. $31, yes, but that's way different than dredging. That's way less than what you can dredge a reservoir up in here. There was in 2001, there was a engineering report by Bassick Kempinski, and they came up with a plan, and they said it would take 10 seasons to dredge that reservoir, 150,000 cubic yards. And the gentleman that talked after Mr. Ketchum talked about sequestering the spoil that come out of there. You start looking at the cost for this, and it's hard to figure out the cost because it isn't done because it's so costly. You could be looking anywhere from $200 to $300 a cubic yard. I don't know if anybody's got a calculator up there. You might want to multiply 150,000 by $200, $300. You might get something close to between $200 and $300 million to dredge that reservoir. The thing about engineering is that all dams have a lifespan. Sedimentation in reservoirs basically makes them unusable and stuff. And the reservoir's almost 100 years old. We might be at the end of its useful lifetime. I think you're very courageous for the work that you've done. I wish that more information would have been done on the dredging aspect, because I think it would have killed the whole dime. Maybe a secret process, because that's the economics. If you're going to go with the maintaining the reservoir by dredging and putting in a new plant, I think we would put the for sale sign on our business right now, because somebody came up with a figure of $28 a thousand. That's probably what you'd be looking at. And the most costly water in the United States right now is about $25 a thousand. Keeping the reservoir, rebuilding the plant would probably put you in the range of having the most costly water in the United States. And that's the facts. Jack.
Hi, my name is Jessica Worsley. I am representing Chautauqua County Health Department. I'm the director of the Environmental Health Division. Chautauqua County Health Department's interest in this entire endeavor is about ensuring that the village has clean, reliable water for future generations that maintains compliance with Chautauqua County and New York State Department of Health standards. The County Health Department has provided village officials and residents with factual information regarding the reservoir, the water treatment plant, and the distribution system. We've engaged local officials to share our concerns directly and support their efforts to understand the full scope of Fredonia's public water supply and its issues. We've presented a lengthy description of Fredonia's public water supply here on this stage, and our concerns regarding the reservoir, the water treatment plant, in the public informational meeting that was held here in spring of '24. People were encouraged to submit questions, and we answered those questions. Every question that was submitted, we answered. We've attended and we've watched the public meetings such that we could be aware of any misinformation or common questions that are being asked. And in response, we've created and submitted documents to village officials to address the common questions that we have heard or to address the conflicting information that was presented at public meetings. The most recent example of that is the document that we presented about why the interconnections can't be used effectively during a boil water order. and the village officials put that information on their website. We've encouraged village officials to share our documents, as I've stated. We've also answered phone calls and email communications directly from a large number of individuals. Some folks have chosen not to ask us those questions directly and maintain that they still have questions. We can't answer questions that were never asked. In an effort to continue that support, we have submitted a letter of support for the village as they do potentially seek to find grant funding to pursue their alternative 2. I'd like to read that letter to you now so that you can all fully understand the health department's concerns and support for pursuing option number 2. Dated September 9th, 25, we've addressed the letter, Dear Mayor Ferguson, the Chautauqua County Health Department is in full support of the village's pursuit of grant funding if they choose to implement the preliminary engineering report option alternative number 2. This alternative involves interconnection with the North Chautauqua County Water District, decommissioning the village water treatment plant, and drawing down the reservoir. Both the village's contracted engineering firm, Labella, and the Chautauqua County Health Department have identified alternative number 2 as the most sound and effective long-term solution to resolve the village's long-standing public water supply challenges, ensuring the improved system reliability, ensuring regulatory compliance, and public health protection. This recommendation is based not only on fiscal prudence, but more critically on a multitude of operational and regulatory deficiencies that make continued operation of the existing system untenable. The village's current water treatment facility and source reservoir have been documented as vulnerable to drought conditions and are located on a constrained site that presents serious challenges for future upgrades. The reservoir has experienced significant volume loss due to sedimentation, and safe yield analysis shows that the system cannot meet current or future demand without depleting source capacity. These risks are compounded by increasing climate-related stresses, including droughts and floods, and the village's historical difficulty in maintaining regulatory compliance. The Chautauqua County Health Department inspection of the village's drinking water supply system in 2025 identified numerous significant deficiencies under Subpart 5-1 and Appendix 5-A of the New York State Sanitary Code, many of which have persisted for years, despite repeated citations. These include deficiencies in source capacity, that is your reservoir, deficiencies in sludge removal, filtration, chemical feed systems, disinfection, backflow prevention, standby power, earthen dam integrity, cross-connection control, and site security. Specific violations have also been noted in critical areas such as operator safety, system redundancy, storage capacity, intake structural functionality, and disinfection. Several of these deficiencies have led to multiple boil water orders in recent years and present ongoing public health and safety risks. Many of the required standards outlined in the Guidance 10 States standards are not met by current system design. And given the condition of the infrastructure, they cannot feasibly be brought into compliance. Alternative 2 offers the Village of Fredonia a clear and necessary path forward, one that resolves long-standing regulatory deficiencies, eliminates the high hazard liability associated with the reservoir
time
dam.
out. Excuse me. Other people here have had their time, and she's asked for time, and she's representing an organization. Enough.
Alternative 2 offers the village a clear and necessary path forward, one that resolves long-standing regulatory deficiencies, eliminates the high hazard liability associated with the reservoir dam, reduces operational and maintenance burdens, and provides capacity for future growth of this village. It is the only alternative that addresses the village's current and long-term risk profile while ensuring safe, sustainable, and compliant water service. Continued reliance on an outdated infrastructure poses ongoing risk to public health and system reliability. This project, Alternative 2, reflects sound planning, regional coordination, and a readiness to implement lasting solutions. We fully support the village's efforts should they choose to secure funding, and respectfully urge favorable consideration of this critical initiative.
I didn't hear any sound planning when Mr. Graya was asking about trash issues that need to be handled.
Excuse me, we didn't interrupt you when you spoke. Okay, she's allowed. Okay. We're going to end the meeting right now if you don't stop. Show somebody some respect once in a while. Yeah.
Show us some respect.
Yeah, we do. And you've managed to disrupt yet another meeting. Congratulations.
Oh, sorry, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Should anybody have questions that they would like to address to the health department? We are a government agency. We work 8:30 to 4:30. You are welcome to contact us. We are happy to share information.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good.
Thank you, folks.
Before we go any further, and since this is a special meeting, and because we're being held accountable, then I'm going to take off my mayor hat for 2 minutes. I want my 3 minutes. No, of course not. I want my 3 minutes, and here it goes. Okay? I've been a resident here for 38 years. 38 years. And since 2015, I've heard nothing about the discussion of our water system. That long ago. And we're sitting here, some of us have only been here for a year and a half. Some people have been here longer. Some people have been here for 4 years. 17 times this community was asked to dredge a reservoir that was man-made. And 17 times the request has been ignored. During that time, more silt, more debris, and yes, more chemicals have built up over the course of time. And yet, during all that time, it still was never dredged. Well, dredge it. Okay, let's talk about dredging. There's no road to dredge, which means there would be the cost of building a road to dredge. As the health department, as the state has told us, in order to dredge, and especially with the contaminants that have built up under that silt, we would have to build a containment chamber to put that residue in, as Mitch has mentioned, and that residue would have to sit for between 8 and 10 years at the cost of this village, at least 3 to 5 miles away from the containment, from the reservoir, so it doesn't leach back in to the reservoir. 10 years ago, there was a picnic table less than 15 feet from that building. The reservoir now sits 2.5 feet from the edge of a cliff. Well, fix the cliff. The cliff is silt and mud and dirt and would take millions upon millions of dollars to find any type of temporary solution. For 38 years, I have sat here and watched multiple cans kicked down the road. We're not ready. We should do this. We should do that. But hold off when the decision time comes up. Hold off. And it was one of the reasons why I was supposedly asked to run for office. 97 years old is this treatment plant. And just today, we have 4 clarifiers, if you pay attention to the meetings, that need to be replaced, that were replaced previous administrations, and we're still paying for those 5 years ago, and now they have to be replaced. The cost of that replacement was announced today at $356,000. $83,000 to build the water treatment plant alone, not including the bridge, not including the years of foresting, which the foresting expert that was brought to my office by a certain group in this room said you have to have new growth. You have to have new roots in order to act as a filtration process. Ignored. In fact, this community paid a Forcon to deforest, paid the bill, and never had the foresting done. Talk about wasted taxpayers' money. The list goes on and on and on. This is a 97-year-old building, who many of you haven't had the chance, and I understand, to go through that building. Right? PFAS, you want to talk about PFAS? PFAS is everywhere, unfortunately. But get the calls at 3 o'clock in the morning that there's a boil water order. And every one of you was furious, as well as I am, each and every time it happens. How many times have you turned on your TV in the last 3 years and seen other communities with boil water orders? And we've had 7. And I would ask people in this room who were previously in these chairs, met some people for 12 years, what did you do during this time when the government told you you had a spillway that was too small, when the government told you that your dam was insufficient for what you were doing, when you were an elected official sitting in this seat and you have the gall to come into this room and start blaming these people? I have my 3 minutes. Thank you. Okay, thank you. 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
Up on what you already said. You said you weren't going to dredge up the past and blame people, but there you sit all high and mighty there, buddy. I'm going to tell you something.
Please do.
I live out on Ferry Road. Dan Pecos says that he's going to go under the thruway bridge and under the railroad tracks to give us water. Why? There's one at 7/10 of a mile at the corner of Route 5 in Barry, that you wouldn't have to disturb those entities, the thruway and the railroad tracks. But you know what? If by this time, Dan, you can keep the water. I go to Ursipie and get my submersible pump. All right, we got a well water, but you know what? North County Water District taxes us. There isn't a pipe in front of our house. So screw me. You know you guys are going to get screwed by the payment of hardship of taxes and out of control mouths and minds and lack of heart to commit to this community. We're using the reservoir right now. And so there's no history of any dredging. You don't have any paperwork of that dredging. Get down to it and take care of it. Quit causing a hardship for this community of threats and confusion and lack of unwilling or deliberate facts. But it's transparency is called honesty. Whether it's tough and true, or give us the truth. All right, I don't have no boots, but I know where the BS is, and I don't have a master's in it, okay? A lot of baloney has been set out by you 4 and 5, but not of Miss Twitchell. And I'm sorry that she's going to be off the board soon, because she's the only one who's had a spine of truth and intelligence, along with Mr. Dreo, the Sedota family, God rest James, because he's sure committed to it. Tom Carpenter, Jim Linden, Athanasia, dredge up some support instead of knocking us down. I don't live in the village, and I don't even have a pipe in front of our house. So where is Dan Pecos to say, oh, well, that's the first thing I was going to do when I ran for, Don Staker. We've been waiting 15 years, actually, since 1962. I don't need the national fuel, and I don't need the water. I go to Ursipie and speak with Sean B. and Alex, and I go get the pump and the underwater wiring. So for you guys wanting Chautauqua County North Water District, how about Brockton? What happened to Brockton's plan? They're our neighbors. Have you listened to them? They opted out after they got screwed on. Well, gee, we got a water break. Well, gee, North County Water District isn't going to pay for that. So check about your contracts. Sure, join in the water for an intermunicipal, whatever. Join in and let's get along. But not to screw and lie to each other, okay? And knocking down each other. If you've been in here for 38 years, good for you. I've been here since I was 4 years old. Said goodbye to my Baba, 183 miles, and live here. So this is my family. This is my friends. This is my community. Share and be honest. Come clean. Don't be signing any contracts and making these people hardship for who's going to pay what. Please, I'm begging you, please. Don't vote to screw Fredonia and to become what? Town of Pomfret? Consolidate? Who's going to be in charge then? Which way did he go? Come on.
Sure.
Stop the clowning around, the blaming. You just backed up on what you said, that you were going to dredge up who did what last year or 10 years ago.
Okay.
Let's dredge it.
Let's keep our water, a little bit at a time, dredge it. If there isn't a path, how the heck did you get down there, you know? Trucks can build it. St. George is here. There's community. There's all kinds of resources. The water is there in our control. Don't lose it.
The last question, before we move forward, one of the questions that was brought up is why this didn't go forward with an agreement with the city of Dunkirk. Funds are available for intermunicipal agreements, and that means more than just one community. When we did study the agreement with the city of Dunkirk, is when the announcement came out about their budgets, which would not allow them to participate financially. 2 communities would have to participate financially. And then you get the better grants, et cetera, et cetera. When push came to shove, the city was unable to participate financially and had offered a piece of land to install one of the pumps on, and the state had refused that as a intermunicipal agreement. It had to be financial. So that put the Dunkirk connection out of our reach and the inability to complete that. We're going to move on to resolutions. I want to thank everybody for their talks. We have somebody else?
Yes.
There's somebody else out here that wants to talk? I'm sorry, I can't see with lights. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for one more speaker. I only have a question regarding the involved agencies that should have been listed on the environmental assessment form, but were not. And I'm happy to see the county health department here because I certainly I interpret them as an involved agency. Now, my question is, has the Chautauqua County Planning Board been involved? Has the Chautauqua County Planning Board been asked to submit comments? And I'm not sure if that's a question for our board or for the Chautauqua County Health Department. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Or comments? Okay, with that, we're going to have to move on to resolutions.
Whereas the village operates a sewage treatment plant located in the town of Dunkirk, New York, which has extra capacity, and whereas the Portland-Pomfret-Dunkirk Sewer District collects sewage from its users, but does not have whereas the Portland-Pomfret-Dunkirk Sewer District collects sewage from its users, but does not have treatment infrastructure, whereas an agreement to process the sewage of the district would generate revenue for the village while providing a much-needed service to the district, whereas the parties are authorized to enter agreement pursuant to General Municipal Law, Section 119-A, County Law, Section 265, and District Resolution, and whereas agreement is outlined as follows. January 1st, 2025 to December 31st, 2029, PPD responsible for its maintenance of lines and equipment. PPD charged a rate of 1/2 times the village rate. Terms of terminating the contract for both parties, violation of the contract, payment terms, interest. Now, therefore, in consideration of the agreement, all parties agree to the satisfaction of past due invoices by PPD to the village. Be resolved, the mayor is hereby authorized and directed to sign the sewage treatment services agreement with the Portland-Pomfret-Dunkirk Sewer District.
Second.
Trustee Twitchell?
Before I vote, I'd like to read a statement. The Village of Fredonia has been subsidizing the county's use of our wastewater treatment plant for the past 5 years. The village's discounted rate of 50% to county customers is unsubstantiated by the very wording of the present contract. The contract states that the taxpayers of the village are allowed to charge an adequate rate to cover operations and maintenance at the wastewater plant. New York State municipal law encourages municipalities to set their citizen-owned utility rates as they see fit to maintain their facilities. The PPD sewer rate must be at a premium to reflect the village's sole responsibility for the wastewater plant. This new PPD rate must be at a minimum of 50% greater than the rate paid by village users. And 100% premium or double the village rate would be in line with historic rates and account for village's need to create revenue in a time of fiscal emergency. The present contract contains a clause in which disputes over rate structure may allow the county to withhold payment for a period not to exceed 3 months. The 3 months is up. The county's payment in arrears are nearly $50,000 right now, and I say they must be paid now. And I vote nay on this.
Trustee Wandel?
Aye.
Trustee Syracuse?
Aye.
Trustee Brockler?
Aye.
Trustee Esperson?
I'm going to say aye, and I want to point out that the current contract, which was negotiated by Mr. Sedota, approved by the village board, and signed by Mayor Landis, has the same terms as the contract that we have just approved right now. So we are not reinventing the wheel. We are taking the same terms as have existed in the last 5 years.
And do you know the reason for that?
I do.
There were 2 trustees that were threatened by the county that they would be sued. I'm telling you right now.
Okay.
That they would be sued if they did not agree to this.
Wow. And you're taking her word for that. Okay. All right.
I know for a fact.
Okay, we have a vote. Next resolution.
I do not want to approve this resolution. Presently, we're in arbitration with our fireman contract, and I don't believe we should be doing any hiring until our arbitration is over and a decision has been made to hire another fireman or not. So I do not approve of this, and I will not read it.
I will read it for you. Be it resolved that Ryan Martin, yes.
You can't.
Pardon?
You can't.
Oh, I can't
read it.
That's right. Go right ahead.
Be it resolved that Ryan Martin of DeWittville, New York, 14781, is hereby appointed as full-time firefighter with the Village of Fredonia Fire Department, effective November 1st, 2025, at a rate of $22.75 per hour, and will serve a probationary term of 18 months in compliance with all applicable civil service rules and regulations.
I'll second that.
Okay, Trustee Wandel.
Aye.
Trustee Brockler.
Aye.
Trustee Syracuse.
Because this is not hiring an additional firefighter, this is replacing someone who retired earlier this year, I vote aye.
Trustee Esperson.
I vote nay, as I voted last time that this came before us, until the contract is ironed out and we know exactly how many firefighters are going to be necessary to serve all of the shifts, and how many paramedics are going to need. I will continue to say no hiring new firefighters, so that's a no.
You didn't ask me for my vote, Mayor.
Mayor Twitchell. Mayor
Trustee.
Trustee Twitchell.
You wish.
Oh, yeah.
I vote nay.
Nay. Okay, thank you.
Be it resolved that the duties of the Village of Fredonia Registrar are hereby assigned to the Village Treasurer, Alyssa LeBeau, of Westerly Drive, Fredonia, New York, effective immediately at a rate of pay of $10 per document, commensurate with the current state of New York Registrar reimbursement rate.
Second.
Trustee Esperson.
Aye.
Trustee Brockler.
Aye.
Trustee Syracuse.
Aye.
Trustee Wandel.
Aye.
Trustee Twitchell.
Aye.
So we're going back to the opening page.
Whereas the Village of Fredonia developed the May 2025 engineering evaluation of the Village of Fredonia public water system that identified deficiencies and feasible alternatives to allow the village to continue to provide reliable, safe drinking water for service area residents. Whereas the village has been reviewing and investigating improvements herein the project to include installation of distribution system pressure-reducing valves, targeted modification of distribution system piping, interconnection structures along the border between Town of Pomfret and the Village of Fredonia, construction of a new water storage tank, decommissioning and demolition of the village's existing water treatment plant, utilization of the proposed Town of Pomfret water storage tank, as more fully detailed in the engineering evaluation. Whereas the village, acting as lead agency for the projects, has determined that the project is Type 1 activity and has completed coordinated review with involved and interested agencies, and after reviewing parts 2 and 3 of the full EFA, have declared that no significant adverse environmental impact will occur as a result of the project, and that no environmental impact statement is required. Whereas the town of Pomfret, acting as lead agency for the North End Water District project, has determined that the proposed North End Water District Phase 3 will not have a significant adverse environmental impact. The action involved is improvement of the facilities in the North End Water District, number 7, Phase 3, calls for the installation of approximately 74,000 linear feet of water main and 2 water storage tanks, including the proposed storage tank that will serve the Village of Fredonia. The project is located in the town of Pomfret. The findings were published in the New York State DEC Environmental Notice Bulletin, February 19, 2025. Whereas the proposed interconnections between the town of Pomfret and the Village of Fredonia will benefit both municipalities and will enable purchase of water by the Village of Fredonia from the Northern Chautauqua County Water District, and the parties have entered into an intermunicipal agreement. Whereas New York State Environmental Facilities Corporation is offering grants for clean and drinking water projects during the 2025-2026 state fiscal year to selected municipalities with infrastructure projects that protect public health and improve water quality. Whereas the Village of Fredonia, acting as lead applicant, is seeking funding through the New York State Water Infrastructure Improvement WIIA grant and Intermunicipal Grant Program, IMG. Whereas New York State Environmental Facilities Corporation requires a resolution authorizing the undertaking of the project and the total funding appropriated for the project. The resolution must also designate a representative of the applicant who is authorized to sign the funding agreement with EFC and any associated documents. Now, therefore, it is resolved that the village authorizes the undertaking and approval of the project as outlined above and is further detailed in the engineering evaluation and prior resolutions of this board, and the estimated project cost is $17,500,000. Further resolved that the mayor of the Village of Fredonia, Michael J. Ferguson, and his designees and assigns is authorized to investigate, negotiate, enter into further agreements as may be necessary to undertake the project in accordance with all laws and regulations, and is further resolved that the Village of Fredonia as lead applicant authorizes and empowers Mayor Michael J. Ferguson to sign and submit a grant application and sign the funding agreement with Environmental Facilities Corporation and any associate documents. Further resolved that this resolution shall take effect immediately.
Second.
Trustee Rockler.
Considering that I would prefer us to have both options available, but it's unrealistic to fix our water supply while we have no existing water supply, and we sit here one harmful algal bloom away from not a boil water notice, but a don't use the water for any purpose notice. If we are drinking from Lake Erie, we're getting it from Dunkirk, and Dunkirk's treatment plant can deal with a harmful algal bloom, whereas our treatment plant cannot. And that's as far as I'll go with that. I will say aye.
Trustee Esperson?
Aye.
Trustee Syracuse?
I've heard all of your comments repeatedly. I checked the petition this afternoon that was done on change.org. As of this afternoon, it was at 192 signatures. Former Mayor Landis stated that the petition that she is aware of was around 300 signatures.
You know what? Let her talk. We didn't interrupt you guys when you were speaking. Let her talk.
Out of the 4,000 registered voters of Fredonia, that is not near the number that you need to force a public referendum or a permissive referendum. That also does not clearly represent the majority of the population of the Village of Fredonia, even if you take it down to just the registered voters. The capital cost, my vote tonight is based on the fact that the capital costs for one project, option 2, is less than the capital costs for option 1. We are also more likely to get grant funding for option 2 as opposed to option 1. In fact, we were told by both grant writers, administrators, engineering firms, that it was highly unlikely that we would receive grant funding
for option 1 because it would largely be looked at as a maintenance project because these were all things that we should have been doing over the lifespan of the water treatment plant. Our water costs are going to go up significantly every year. 3% is what Labella projects for option 2 for the yearly increase. Since 2020 alone, our water rate has gone up 37%, 54% if you include the base fee increases. That's more than 3% each year. Water and taxes are 2 separate funds. It is correct, we have made improvements to the plant and multiple updates because we recognize that we cannot keep letting our infrastructure crumble because this project isn't going to be as simple as flipping a switch tomorrow. This project, no matter what it is going to take years and improvements need to be made in the meantime. However, there are significant improvements that will be cost prohibitive if possible at all, and that is increasing the capacity of the reservoir. We may be able to increase it if we, I don't know, somehow dug in Mike's backyard and found a coffee can of a few $1 billion. But we also don't know that that would even be enough to increase the capacity to meet the health department standards. Also of note that connecting to the North County Water District is a one-time project. After that, any improvements that are made to whatever treatment plant we are using at that time, whether it's Dunkirk, whether Dunkirk moves their plant, whatever they do with it, that will be distributed over far more users and a far larger cost distribution than what our treatment plant would be distributed over for just us alone. That means if we were to go with our own water treatment plant, that means spending at least $35 million every 25 to 30 years. We wouldn't even be done paying for this project before we had to start the next one. I've also noted that the Save Our Reservoir group has highlighted that Dunkirk is going to be receiving a settlement for the forever chemicals that were found in the lake. We are also participating in that settlement, and the gentleman that came and spoke with us is highly confident that we will also receive a settlement.
You know, you asked us to explain our vote, and when we try to do it, you do nothing but interrupt us.
Just
Let her
because you
explain her
don't
vote.
like what my answer is does not mean that I'm not answering your questions. I'm not a water expert, and I am not a grant expert. I'm choosing to heed the advice of the experts in their fields. And so with that, my vote is yes. Not an entire village,
Trustee
300 of
Wendell?
you.
Excuse me.
If you have 1,030 votes, you can force a referendum. You need 1,030. Get to work. They've got to be registered voters.
Move it along, Mike.
Pardon?
Let's keep going.
Next trustee.
Yeah.
Call for the vote. Trustee Wendell.
Thank you, Mayor. Now it's my turn to speak, and I would appreciate your patience because I have a statement that's 3 pages in length. So I've been doing my homework. I spent time preparing this statement, and I'd like y'all to hear it. And thank you. So here we go. Exactly 2 years ago, I campaigned door to door in our village for the elected office of village trustee. If elected, I knew it was to be a challenging position. Out of 6 candidates for 3 positions, I was almost the top vote getter and won the trustee seat. Even before the 4-year term began, my goal was to be astute and understanding of our village water crisis. That effort has benefited me to gain strong insight and understanding as I studied, listened to residents, engaged with the village water treatment plant and wastewater treatment plants, and operational staff. I have evaluated the pros and cons on both sides of alternative 1 and 2 scenarios and debate issues. As an electrical engineer for several years, I have employed my skill sets, and problem solving. My style has been to research the facts, question, listen, verify, study, and then present my collected information to both internal staff or external customers. So this is my background and has formulated the basis of how I approach our water situation with the goal of finding a solution to the issue. Engineers are problem solvers. The Fredonia Reservoir was built in 1884. I found this on the internet. This is an actual map of the reservoir in 1884 when it was first created. The current water treatment plant, original base plant, was built in 1928. The commission plaque is on the inside wall of the plant. It was subsequently added onto in the mid-1930s along with an earthen dam and spillways. An expansion for the plant was constructed in the 1960s. Here are some facts. The water treatment plant is now almost 100 years old, as the mayor has spoken, and the reservoir is 141 years old, originally established, as I just said, in 1884. The earthen dam is no longer insurable due to heightened New York State DEC standards for liability and code conformances. The dam spillway has been cited for being way undersized relative to the size of the body of water it services. The Canada Way Creek ravine cliff has encroached upon our water treatment plant base foundation due to erosion. It is currently about 2 feet away from our water treatment plant and over time is advancing into it. The erosion path can be tracked over recent years. The possibility and even probability of it dropping down, that is the plant, a 70-foot cliff, is very real. The reservoir itself has never been dredged, but was always promised to do so over many recent years and decades. Meanwhile, the base sediment layers in the reservoir have collected over time. This is due to the Lake Erie watershed, distribution of collected soils, and even adjacent forestry landslides. The overall impact has been a gradual, decades-long decrease in the reservoir water capacity because of the base sediment buildup. Additionally, periodic summer droughts have caused temporary low levels in the reservoir and thus impacting its function as a reliable water source. Other deficiencies include a chlorination system that is inappropriate, undersized, and unreliable. It has been cited for not only safety violations due to operator exposure to toxic chlorine gas, but frequent operational breakdowns. Next is the water treatment capacity issue. It rises the limit of a maximum available daily capacity and production while utilizing its clear well and water storage tank. If excess emergency needs emerged, the water treatment plant would likely not deliver. There are 2 water clarifiers in the plant that help to separate solids from liquids. It's one of the initial parts of the water treatment process. They function in the early stage of the water treatment process. Yes, they were replaced some recent years back, but are unfortunately undersized. This presents 2 issues. Number one, it limits the water throughput and hence the production capacity of the plant. And number 2, it impacts the ability to take a clarifier offline for periodic maintenance, which is very necessary. More recently, the reservoir water intake platforms at upper and lower intake gates are rusted, broken, not operational. This is because the control mechanisms are bent, broken, and therefore not functional. To boot, the downstream main water line pipe valves in the Canada Way Creek ravine are rusted fast and not operational. That means we cannot limit the flow of water. What this essentially means is there's no way to isolate our water treatment plant water flow on both the intake and outtake sides of the plant. A current impact of this issue is if the village were to utilize the in-place Chautauqua County Water District emergency interconnects, then that functionality is negated because of pressure differentials due to the inability to limit or at best isolate the Fredonia water treatment plant water lines. About 2.5 years ago, our Chautauqua County Department of Health had put into public focus many of our water supplies deficiencies and threatened to cite and fine the village for them, if not resolved. I recently relayed to the Fredonia public via our village board meeting and a front page Observer article that the Chautauqua County Department of Health had cited Fredonia water supply issues since 2003. There are still a number of outstanding issues which the Department of Health and the DEC can confirm. This means that certain legacy issues still remain in part for up to 22 years and are not yet resolved. Among them are, I have 6 of them here: reservoir capacity and diminished water volume, lack of dredging, both cited back in 2008 or 17 years ago. Second, deficiencies in the reservoir water intake structure, not controllable and thereby having no control for that function, cited in 2016 or 9 years ago. Inability to provide operational redundancy for the chlorination circulation pumps, cited in 2012 and only recently resolved, but with the current tablet-based subsystem. The current storage capacity, number 4, storage of water volume or pressure for fire protection, is below requirement levels, first cited in 2003, 22 years ago. The southeast corner of the plant is approximately 2 feet from the ravine bank edge, about a 75-foot sheer drop-off, first cited in 2008. Number 6, the raw water lines feeding the plant from the reservoir and the transmission mains exiting the plant are exposed above grade and vulnerable, first cited by the county in 2008. While noting our water treatment plant status and deficiencies, I then ask, so then how do we move forward and mitigate this ongoing and very chronic conditions and scenarios? Like anything, systems inevitably deteriorate with time, and that decline is directly related to the level of maintenance and capital improvements that are invested or not invested. On this note, I certainly understand the history, legacy, and civic pride in this community of a man-made reservoir and water treatment plant which has benefited the village residents, businesses, and industries for decades. Accordingly, to convert from a village-owned asset to a non-village supplied water source is a big swing. Fundamentally, this is about change, big change. And change typically is not easily accepted nor assimilated. I understand this. We need decisions that are governed by long-term planning and vision, along with partnerships, collaborations, and intermunicipal agreements. Silo mentalities and independent, standalone paradigms are no longer sustainable. Only our very survival as a village is dependent on these ideas, I believe. The probability to fund future water projects with New York State and federal grants is relatively high if we operate in a partnership mode. If not, it is very, very low. In my door-to-door campaign, the general commentary from village residents was not debating where to tap into the water supply, but rather, quote unquote, just get it fixed. We are all tired of the water boils and, yes, the water main breaks. They are serious problems and they need serious tackling. As a footnote, my recent public commentary has been, it's called continuous improvement. This is an operation practice in industry, especially manufacturing. It is a quality standard that is motivated to elevate safety, reliability, and performance. To that end, our water committee has launched a chlorination project for our existing plant that will address and hopefully mitigate any and all chlorination processes, deficiencies, or failures in our existing plant, which have been a repeated source of water boil issues in the recent past. It will offer robustness to our purification process. Construction and commissioning of the project should potentially be complete in quarter 4 of this year. I believe and maintain my vote to join the North County Water District is in the best interest of the Village of Fredonia. The benefits will be a safe, reliable stream of quality water to service all village residents, businesses, and industries. As a combined regional effort and agreement with the Chautauqua County, North County Water District, we can all look forward to a cost-effective, safe, reliable water resource. So Mayor and Village Board and Fredonia residents, let's go forward with this plan. Mayor, my vote is aye.
Trustee Twitchell.
Thank you.
I just want to say that I believe Labella didn't look into that we supply 8 or 9 districts with water, and we would be able to get grants because of that, and they never did look into that. And I don't know why we would want to give away our reservoir and just rely on Dunkirk. There's many issues about Lake Erie water, and not that it's not safe, but if something were to happen, who do you think would be without water? Dunkirk, they would consider Dunkirk first for their source of water for their residents. Fredonia would be left with whatever they would deem necessary. In other words, they would be controlling our water. Right now, we're controlling our water. This is a utility that we own, and I don't believe we should be giving it up so easily. For the past 6 years, we haven't looked into any grants. And I asked last year, back in July, and both Trustee Syracuse and Trustee Esperson said, no, we're not going to look into any grants. We'll just keep it going, spend money when we can. And with that, I am voting no on this.
With that, motion passes. Trustee Syracuse?
Whereas, in accordance with the New York State Environmental Quality Review Regulations, SEEKR, the Board of Trustees of the Village of Fredonia announced its intent to serve as lead agency on August 4th, 2025, to conduct an environmental review of the Village of Fredonia Water System Improvements Project. A recently completed engineering evaluation of the Village of Fredonia Public Water System, PWS, identified deficiencies and feasible alternatives to allow the Village PWS to continue providing reliable, safe drinking water for service area residents. In accordance with Chautauqua County Health Department requirements, the Village has been reviewing and investigating a suite of improvements for the PWS that include but are not limited to the installation of distribution system pressure reducing valves, PRVs, targeted modification of distribution system piping to 24-inch, 12-inch, and 10-inch diameter piping along Water Street, as necessary to support proposed infrastructure, the installation of 3 interconnection structures along the border between the town of Pomfret and the Village of Fredonia, the construction of a new water storage tank, and the decommissioning and demolition of the village's existing water treatment plant, as more fully detailed in the engineering evaluation and prior resolutions of this board. The engineering analysis also identified deficiencies with the existing dam that impounds the village's reservoir. Included in the PWS improvements recommended by the village's engineers are modifications to the dam and reservoir to comply with New York State dam safety regulations. These modifications include dewatering the reservoir to a level that reduces the hydraulic load on the existing spillway structure, improving the low-level outlet system to maintain the water elevation, and anchoring of the spillway to meet structural requirements as more fully detailed in the engineering evaluation and prior resolutions of this board. Overall ground disturbance is estimated to be, give or take, 5.1 acres. The Village of Fredonia is investigating and contemplating use of the proposed Town of Pomfret storage tank in its PWS. That project has completed a separate SEEKR review with the Town of Pomfret serving as lead agency for that review, for which a negative declaration has been issued and reviewed and considered by the Village. 2, the Village Board has determined that the proposed action is a Type 1 as defined under SEEKR. 3, the Village Board, in its capacity of lead agency, has caused to be prepared an environmental assessment of the significance of and potential environmental impact of the action described above. 4, on August 5th, 2025, the Village Board notified the involved and interested agencies of its intention to act as lead agency for this project and circulated Part 1 of the long environmental assessment form. 5, Comments received on the project have been addressed in Part 2 of the environmental assessment form. The village will continue to work with federal, state, and local agencies until all necessary permits and approvals have been obtained. 6, the village board has considered the environmental record prepared for this action, including any comments received from the involved agencies and the proposed negative declaration.
Second.
Hold on. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the village board declares that it will serve as lead agency for the Village of Fredonia Water System Improvements Project, and the village board declares that based on the environmental record, which has been prepared and is incorporated herein by reference, the project will result in no major impacts and therefore will not cause significant damage to the environment. A negative declaration under seeker is therefore issued for this project.
I second.
Trustee Esperson?
Aye.
Trustee Brockler?
Aye.
Trustee Syracuse?
Aye.
Trustee Twitchell?
Nay.
Trustee Wendell?
Aye.
Bond resolution dated September 10th, 2025, a resolution authorizing improvements to the water distribution system, Phase 1, in and for the Village of Fredonia, Chautauqua County, New York, at a maximum estimated cost of $17,500,000, and authorizing, subject to permissive referendum, the issuance of $17,500,000 serial bonds of said village to pay the cost thereof. Whereas all conditions precedent to the financing of the capital project hereinafter described, including compliance with the provisions of the State Environmental Quality Review Act, have been performed, and it has been determined that said capital project is a Type 1 action as to which a negative declaration has been made. Where it is now desired to authorize the financing of said capital project, now therefore be it resolved by the affirmative vote of not less than 2/3 of the total voting strength of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Fredonia, Chautauqua County, New York, as follows. Section 1. Improvements to the water distribution system, Phase 1, in and for the Village of Fredonia, Chautauqua County, New York, including original furnishings, equipment, machinery, apparatus, appurtenances, and incidental improvements and expenses in connection therewith are hereby authorized, subject to permissive referendum at a maximum estimated cost of $17,500,000. Section 2. The plan for the financing of the aforesaid maximum estimated cost is by the issuance of $17,500,000 serial bonds of said village, hereby authorized to be issued, therefore, pursuant to the provisions of the local finance law, provided, however, that the amount of bonds to be issued shall be reduced to the extent of grants received in connection therewith. Section 3. It is hereby determined that the period of probable usefulness of the aforesaid specific object or purpose is 40 years, pursuant to subdivision 1 of paragraph A of section 11 of the local finance law. It is hereby further determined that the maximum maturity of the serial bonds herein authorized will exceed 5 years. Section 4. The faith and credit of said Village of Fredonia, Chautauqua County, New York, are hereby irrevocably pledged for the payment of the principal of and interest on such bonds as the same respectively become due and payable. An annual appropriation shall be made in each year sufficient to pay the principal of and interest on such bonds becoming due and payable in such year. To the extent not paid from other sources, there shall annually be levied on all the taxable rental property, real property of said village, a tax sufficient to pay the principal of an interest on such bonds as the same become due and payable. Section 5. Subject to the provisions of the local finance law, the power to authorize the issuance of and to sell bond anticipation notes in anticipation of the issuance and sale of the serial bonds herein authorized, include renewals of such notes, is hereby delegated to the village treasurer, the chief fiscal officer. Such note shall be of such terms, form, and contents, and shall be sold in such manner as may be prescribed by said village treasurer, consistent with the provisions of the local finance law. Section 6. The powers and duties of advertising such bonds for sale, conducting the sale and awarding the bonds are hereby delegated to the village treasurer, who shall advertise such bonds for sale, conduct the sale, and award the bonds in such manner as the village treasurer shall deem best for the interests of said village, including but not limited to the power to sell said bonds to the New York State Environmental Facilities Corporation, provided, however, that in the exercise of these delegated powers, the village treasurer shall comply fully with the provisions of the local finance law and any order or rule of the state controller applicable to the sale of municipal bonds. The receipt of the village treasurer shall be a full acquittance to the purchaser of such bonds, who shall not be obliged to see to the application of the purchase money. Section 7. All other matters except as provided herein relating to serial bonds herein authorized, including the date, denominations, maturities, interest payment dates, within the limitations prescribed herein and the manner of execution of the same, including the consolidation with other issues, and also the ability to issue serial bonds with substantially level or declining annual debt service, shall be determined by the village treasurer or the chief fiscal officer of such village. Such bond shall contain substantially the recital of validity clause provided for in Section 52 of the local finance law, and shall otherwise be in such form and contain such recitals, in addition to those required by Section 51 of local finance law, as the village treasurer shall determine, consistent with the provisions of the local finance law. Section 8. The village treasurer is hereby further authorized at the village treasurer's sole discretion to execute a project finance agreement and any other agreements with the New York State Department of Health and or the New York State Environmental Facilities Corporation, including amendments thereto, and include any instruments or amendments thereto in the effectuation thereof, in order to effect the financing or refinancing of the specific object or purpose described in Section 1 hereof, or a portion thereof by a bond and or note issue of said village in the event of the sale of same to the New York State Environmental Facilities Corporation. Section 9. The power to issue and sell notes to the New York State Environmental Facilities Corporation pursuant to Section 169 of the local finance law is hereby delegated to the village treasurer. Such note shall be of such terms, form, and contents as may be prescribed by said village treasurer, consistent with the provisions of the local finance law. Section 10. The validity of such bonds and bond anticipation notes may be contested only if, 1, such obligations are authorized for an object or purpose for which said village is not authorized to expend money, or 2, the provisions of law which should be complied with at the date of publication of this resolution and not substantially complied with, and an action, suit, or proceeding contesting such validity is commenced within 20 days after the date of such publication, or 3, such obligations are authorized in violation of the provisions of the Constitution. Section 11. This resolution shall constitute a statement of official intent for purposes of Treasury Regulation Section 1.150-2. Other than as specified in this resolution, no monies are or are reasonably expected to be reserved, allocated on a long-term basis, or otherwise set aside with respect to the permanent funding of the object or purpose described therein. Section 12. Upon this resolution taking effect, the same shall be published in summary form in the official newspaper of said village for such purpose, together with the notice of the village clerk as substantially the form provided in Section 81 of the local finance law. Section 13. This resolution is adopted subject to permissive referendum.
Second.
Trustee Twitchell?
I vote nay, but people will have to vote on this permissive referendum. So I don't know what we're going to do if it gets defeated. I vote nay.
Trustee Wandell?
Aye.
Trustee Brockler?
Aye.
Trustee Syracuse?
Aye.
Trustee Esperson?
Aye.
Whereas the village continues to review ways to improve its water system in order to maintain safe and reliable drinking water for its residents, and whereas the village is aware that the town of Pomfret is exploring improvements to its water systems and water storage facilities, and whereas both the village and the town of Pomfret's professional engineers have recommended increased and updated water storage tank and associated pumping facilities, and whereas it appears to be in the best interest of the village and as a way to reduce costs and expenses and as a way to qualify for additional intermunicipal grants to explore an intermunicipal agreement with the town of Pomfret to share the cost, use, operation, and maintenance of a shared water tank and associated pumping facilities. And whereas the village has reviewed a proposed intermunicipal agreement with the town of Pomfret memorializing an intent to explore and negotiate terms of sharing the anticipated water tank and associated pumping facilities. Now therefore be it resolved that as further planning and investigation into available alternatives to improve the village's water system, and specifically reserving the right to investigate and ultimately choose any viable alternative, the village hereby authorizes the mayor to execute and enter into an intermunicipal agreement with the town of Pomfret to explore and further negotiate shared use, expense, operation, and maintenance of a shared water storage tank and associated pumping facilities.
I second this.
Trustee Esperson?
Aye.
Trustee Syracuse?
Aye.
Trustee Wendell?
Aye.
Trustee Brockler?
Aye.
Trustee Twitchell?
Nay.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes tonight's business with a special meeting of the Board of Trustees for the Village of Fredonia. Thank you for your attendance, and we are actually canceling the next meeting because we will not have a quorum, but we will have the new date of the next meeting on our website tomorrow. Thank you and have a safe night.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second?
Second.
We have a second? Trustee Esperson?
Aye.
Trustee Brockler?
Aye.
Trustee Wendell?
Aye.
Trustee Twitchell?
Aye.
Who didn't I say here? Trustee Wendell, or Trustee Syracuse?
Aye.
There we go. Thank you. Everybody stay up here for just a second.
Yep.